That's right. Okay. Let me, should I just introduce him?
Keep it loose.
Yeah. All right. You know what I'm going to do? Because that'll catch me enough, right? Introducing him or no?
I wouldn't rely on that. That's how made mine.
Okay.
So if,
I will. I will just, it's loose and I'll pull it out of my pants and all that stuff. So, the cord's going down my pants. It's nice. So. All right. Wow, it feels good. Yeah, TMI. Well, hello. Well, it's my distinct honor to introduce you to our final expert faculty teacher of Launch Academy, and so excited to have him here live to work with us. All the others were on Zoom. So I'm happy, and I think a couple of you know him, but I'm happy to introduce Jonathan Bender. And Jonathan is a speaker in his own right, a trainer, and a speaking coach. He's an expert on speaking and does that all over the country, and has a program called Claim Your Voice, which is a really powerful online and community-oriented program on helping you be a better speaker in all areas of your life. So he's a friend. He's also lives up in the Santa Rosa area and has been dealing with all of that. And I just feel so grateful that you're here and that you're being with our group with all that going on. And we're building a deeper and deeper friendship. So I appreciate you being here and supporting Launch Academy. So thank you, Jonathan, and welcome. Yay. Oh, look, the shirt's coming off.
It's a new type of online course.
It's a treat.
Dinner
Woo! Dinner and a show.
now you've got our attention.
All right.
See, he's a pro. Look how quickly.
Yeah.
I've done this a few times before. All right. All right. So I know a couple of you, but I just want to first get your names so I know. James. April.
Christina.
James, April, and Christina. Okay, great. And I know Lion and Aaron. And so, so it's been an interesting week. Our house, just so you know, our house is fine. It should stay fine. We've just been evacuated and don't know when we can go back still. So we've been told the earliest word is tomorrow, and it's been an interesting, trying time and good spiritual practice, which, as we know, is sometimes awesome and sometimes still takes challenges. So I'm glad to be here with you today. And just the first thing is that I'm really approaching that what we are doing here today, this is not a talk, this is a coaching session. And so I'm here to work with all of you individually and then to introduce techniques that are going to benefit both everyone who is here live and who is going to be watching at a later time as well. So I have here my notes to ask you things and, and check in, and then did you tell them they're going to be speaking?
Yeah. Actually, no, I didn't. It's okay. It's perfect.
Okay.
They did an exercise yesterday talking about their course.
All right. Cool. Oh, good. So, so that what I would like to do is, rather than just teach you general things, it is really helpful for me to actually just watch you speak. And so after kind of doing a couple initial kind of check-ins and stuff, I would love to, if you're willing to just stand up and talk for a minute. And just, it could be what did you do yesterday for the exercise?
Yeah, they just basically, hey, I want to tell you about my program.
Mm-hmm.
And it took them only a minute. And then why I think it's important is this. And they did a beautiful job. So they can just redo that today.
Great. So that's all you need to do. If you need a minute for everyone if you need a minute to warm up or get the back in your system, we can also do that. So I think, what I just want to say to start off with is that a lot of people approach public speaking as something that we should just be able to do because we can stand up and speak. And there are a lot of people who have either been trained in coaches or who haven't been trained in coaches, who have just kind of Toastmasters for a few years, or decide, I don't want to empower women, or we're going to speak. But it's really an art and a science. And so I've been coaching for over 20 years, and I bring in stuff from being a professional theater director and actor and writer. I train and certify coaches in the method that I created, and everything that I do is a blend of acting, voice, and movement work, things that performers use to find presence, to find confidence, to find self-expression. with like really particular speaking technique that is transparent technique, which means that you can't tell. And a lot of times if you see someone who's been taught through a particular coach, after a few people in a row, you'd be like, oh yeah, I kind of see the commonalities. You should not be able to see it. It should, so my view is that it is based upon how anyone shows up when you are centered, confident, open, willing to be seen, and that's also combined with a lot of personal and spiritual growth, the way that I teach it, because it's also about being willing to step into who we are even more, and to be even more comfortable and relaxed and showing up and making mistakes and being okay with that. And so there's a lot of mindset work and somatic work, energetic work, and I blend together like a lot of things in a very holistic system. And so that's also why I get really strong results, like even just with confidence and nerves that show up for most people at one point or another, whether it's like weeks before or in the middle of a talk or right before, is they have a 95% success rate and dramatic reduction of nerves. So all of the things that that people have issues with, if you really get systematic and clear training for your particular needs, it can improve really dramatically. So I just wanted to give that as a base point to know that my goal here is to just take you to the next step of wherever you are, teach them very particular techniques that can be applied for live speaking, but as Chris and I talked about, we really want to apply this especially for video, for audio, and whatever your particular needs are. Any questions around any of that, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was wondering, could you answer the question, like, what is the essence of the art and what is the essence of the science, so I can see how they...
Sure. So I would say in terms of that's a really great question, of the science side, is that, well, I would say, like, for example, the way that I delineate speaking is in 5 areas, which is content in terms of what you say and how you craft any sort of talk or content to be able to really grab people's attention. And then there's confidence, and so there are many elements of what confidence is, and which is really more about vulnerability and being comfortable being seen, trusting yourself to handle anything in the moment. 3 is connection, and so that you are really deeply connected with your audience, and that also includes, like in terms of the science, there are very specific things. I'll teach you something today of, like, I know you're not having a big emphasis on camera work here, more on audio, but there's some on video.
Yeah, Zoom calls and that.
Yeah, well, including for Zoom, is like, how do you work with a camera? And how do you, for example, how you look into a camera and not at a camera. It's a very big difference as far as what that will look like on the other side. And I have a whole body of work around just connection, and how I break that down. 4th is vocal and physical dynamics. So how you stand, gestures, facial expressions, like very specific technique in terms of the science of it. But that's based upon being totally relaxed. And a place that some people go wrong is they'll teach gestures, but it's not based on being relaxed. And you're not going to be relaxed if you're in freeze response. So it's having that training in terms of like relaxing and how do you prepare and handle that. And how do you enhance the voice, vocal resonance? My voice is a little compromised because my nose is extra stuffed because of the smoke this week. But when you really know how to enhance the voice, advanced vocal dynamics, how to play with pitch, tempo, volume, enunciation, how do you score a talk so that it's like a piece of music and takes people through it and is engaging like a journey. And then charisma and presence. And so charisma and presence are often thought of as things you have or you don't, and they can be grown. Like all of us who would do spiritual work, we know that we can grow presence, but we can grow it as well for speaking as well. Now, so that's kind of like the science, is like the breakdown, the skills, how you slowly build that over time. The art, I would say, is more of how does it you, and that it's not a formula. You have to still be yourself, and to understand the art of how do you respond in the moment with what is needed. And feeling more into that. And so I think that if you think of it just as a science, it can become formulaic. And an art is where you continue to express all of your essence and how you bring that out in the moment as well, while understanding that, just as an example, gesture-wise, that if someone gestures like this, and some people like to kind of, is that you are blocking. and you're blocking the energy of the audience. So when you have more open hands and gestures, that is going to affect the audience differently. Every single thing you do with your voice and your body has a different effect on your audience. And so depending on your vocal tone, on your body language, like I think a more obvious example is like this is probably not going to be here, or this is going to be hiding, but also if here this has a different communication signal that they're not going to read consciously, but it will affect them. The same thing in terms of for people who especially when we get nervous, some people tend to clench their mouth a little bit more, or even if you open it but you are tight, it's like that has a different signal than when you're really relaxed. So it's understanding like those principles and being able to incorporate them, and also is that it's an art form because you're present in the moment and alive. Yeah. So that allowed me to do a nice little breakdown. So yeah, did that help?
She's a plant.
That was great.
Yeah, it was very helpful. That was a plant, right? That was a great.
Yeah. Yeah, other questions?
I have one, Jonathan.
Yeah.
I do most of my work on audio, not video, and I'm much more comfortable with audio because I can use a script.
Uh-huh.
And I script all of my talks out word for word,
Mhm.
and I don't read them. But I have the confidence that I know what I'm going to say because it's all laid out in front of me, and I can check to see what I'm saying and then say it in a way. So I can be very authentic with a script in front of me. It's harder for me to be authentic without a script in front of me. So,
Mhm.
anyway, that's just an issue I need to work on personally. Maybe I need some coaching on that. But
Cool. Let me just speak to that. So you brought up a few interesting terms, things in there. So first of all, authenticity. It's something I do a lot with, and I have, like in my kind of free course, which is kind of based on product launch formula, my very first video is called the Authenticity Trap. And so often this idea of am I being authentic or not is more like, am I comfortable? Do I feel honest? And so often I often suggest to let go of the concept of authenticity and instead strive towards presence. And so I could talk about that for an hour. So so it's not bad. It's something that all of us in the growth circles tend to talk about, and it's not like I never use the term either. But I would say is that there are other things underneath that we could point to. Now, in terms of scripting, here's the danger with having everything scripted out word for word. And this goes for short elevator pitches when you're like, I help people is that when we get it scripted out in practice, it's, first of all, for anything longer, it's really hard to bring in your habitual vocal dynamics when you have a script. For most people, it's hard. I haven't heard you, so I would need to listen to a recording and see that. So what I am a fan of more of is having bullet points, and that you practice it out loud and find the rhythm and word. So you might just say like, first bullet point I'm going to do covering this, maybe even outline of things, and you can kind of glance and make sure that you cover that. And then, but when you practice it, practicing that several times out loud, and you find your own vocal rhythm of those points, so you actually get comfortable and even semi-memorized with that. But it's different than writing it out, because the other thing too is when we write out a script, we're often writing in a way that is meant to be read and not to be spoken. And it doesn't have the same type of inflections. Now, I'm a trained performer. I can make anything sound amazing. My art from the age of 14 was the performance of literature. So I know how to do that. I train people how to do that. But it is a longer arc of learning for most people. And again, I'd have to hear you. Maybe you're fine with that. Than it is to speak it out loud and find the natural rhythm with that. The other thing I'll just say too, in terms of particular scripting techniques and formula, is there are two things to consider in terms of the verbiage that you use. One is, now I don't know what you've taught them or not, but I think I see this a lot in terms of any sort of scripting, is that it comes formulaic. It can be like insert words here or start with these words. You have to make sure those are terms that you would say. And second, it has to be niche specific. So if you're a niche, like if you were CEOs, are going to respond very differently than massage therapists. So basically, like generalize as far as the type of languaging and phrasing and you have to find that way of using the general principles of it. This kind of goes back to the art and science, and if you want to use that metaphor, and to find it so that it really brings out like your voice and who you're speaking to, while also making sure it's hitting those main points that we know are also going to be effective with any sort of scripting. Did I answer your question, or did I just derail on my own thing? Okay, great. Other immediate questions? Actually, let me just go ahead and ask, because I was going to do this anyway, because we've kind of started, I'd love just to hear a little more from each of you of your own relationship to speaking, whether it's live or camera work, and like anything that's up for you, either in general with speaking or around this. So I kind of have an orientation to, at least from those who are in the room, of how that is for you.
Thanks, sir.
And just tell me your name one more time.
James.
Yeah.
And I've found that the thing that gets in my way is I'm usually not quite as prepared as I probably could be.
Uh-huh.
And so I tend to wing it a little more than, that's my growth edge, is to do more scripting. And I feel pretty comfortable in front of the camera. I didn't used to be that comfortable. And I feel like when I'm in the zone and I get present, I can get present. I have maybe I talk too much with my hands. Probably use them a little bit too much, but I feel like I can bring presence.
Great, thank you.
This is mostly virtual. You're not doing any talks in person.
I am starting that actually, and I have done that many times. I used to run workshops and retreats, so yeah.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Yeah, just go ahead.
Well, I mentioned here that I'm doing Facebook Live, and I've been doing it weekly for almost the last year, and so that's put me, into the extemporaneous place pretty well, where I have to, I write out, like, I put on the camera a piece of paper that just sort of things I don't want to forget to mention.
Mm-hmm.
It's still a little awkward, but it's getting better, I think. I do some live speaking. I'm also going to be on a summit, an interview kind of situation, and I have done Zoom calls with people in groups. I do some workshops.
Mm-hmm. And anything else as far as any issues that comes up for you? Or?
Oh God, yes. Well, I had a situation where I was speaking to a group, and the avatar in the group changed at the last minute, and for some reason it threw me.
Mm-hmm.
And I pretty much left my body for the entire thing, and it was frightening, and I don't ever want to experience that again. It was horrible. I was horrified by what happened, so don't want that.
Great, thank you.
And I did Toastmasters.
Okay, great.
I've done some public speaking, and in some videos I do a lot of teleseminars and telesummits, and those are spontaneous, but I usually prepare a lot. I just had one a couple days ago, and I read all my materials so that I could respond to his questions. So I think I'm actually better than I think I am, because when I watched my video, I went, "Oh, that's pretty good." So I liked how I came across without scripting and spontaneously. But I do get very focused on detail, and that's probably where I go wrong. And I do have a lot of ums and ahs that I have to edit out of my recorded programs.
Okay.
Even with the script, I still and ah a lot. I'd love to get rid of those.
He just edits them out, though. That's what
Yeah.
he does.
I can't do it simultaneously. I can just edit it here.
I'm editing.
You're editing in your head. Could you edit me in your head?
Well, I can tell you how to stop saying them.
What's that?
I can show you how to stop saying them.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
yeah.
Great.
And that'd be good for all of us, probably.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's in my vocabulary.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We should
Alright.
just make it a vocabulary word.
So my relationship with public speaking is it saved me academically.
Is it what?
It saved me academically in high school because the nature of my dyslexia is I panic when I have to write things, especially back in the old days with the typewriter. And at that age level, if you tell your
teachers that you would rather do an oral presentation, they froth all over.
Yeah.
They're so excited that you want to actually do public speaking at
Right.
that age. So I didn't write a paper through all of high school. I just delivered everything as oral presentation. And it really wasn't until computers and cutting and pasting that I could actually start to stomach writing something. So I have this sort of romance with oral presentations because it really allowed me to succeed,
Right.
which I wouldn't have been able to otherwise. So, but it's also really old training, you know, it's like debate school cards sort of training. So it feels old. And so anyway, right now in my life, I have a like a 30-year time frame of live presentation with workshops. It's a very, you know, they're only there because they're paying to be there. So everybody who's listening to me is already pre-inclined to believe me and listen to me and love me. So, I mean, it's, but I'm very good at speaking to audiences about shamanism in whatever language they understand. That's one of the things that switching how I'm going to talk about this to my audience is something that I do pretty well if I understand who my audience is. If I don't understand, then I have to wait for them to start asking questions. And right now I have a 9-year every week podcast, hour-long podcast, which is scripted. I'm still listening to the scripting things already. But the whole thing of doing it now on a camera and what does it mean to work with a camera is a totally new world. And I noticed that, and I just did a bunch of videos and they kept saying, look at the camera. I'm like, where is it? It's like, there's all this black stuff over here. Where's the camera? You know, what? And they, you know, they had to put a piece of pink tape on it so I knew what to look. So that whole thing is really new. And that weirdness of when we're in these platforms where you're looking at the people, but that's not where the camera is if you're on your, you know, so all of that is like, oh, can someone please just explain this to me? You know, that piece is really a big growth point.
Right. Great. And sorry, your name again was?
What was that?
What's your name?
Oh, sorry, Christina.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
April.
Yeah.
I used to do a lot more public speaking, but in the past couple of years, I have not been out as much, and it could be anywhere from workshops to meetings. I want to, well, I'm getting ready to do it more, so it's going to be out there. The things that I have problems with is the opposite, reading my audience. It seems to be difficult for me. I'm like never sure how they're feeling or what's going on. I have a problem answering questions. Like somebody will ask a question and I don't know if I ever really answer the question. I might go off on a tangent or something, but I feel like I'm not answering questions. And I also tend to be, I'm a very factual person. So when it comes to being like that high energy, fun, like I think of all these, they're like fun, high energy, Chris. It's like I tend to be more about giving the information, being factual, because I could sit in front of the most boring speaker, but if I'm getting something out of it, I can engage in that. And I know that's not a good way to be. I don't want to be like that. I can be exciting, but that is a little bit hard.
Okay.
For me to like step into that role.
Right. Awesome. Anything in terms of people who are not here that you know that's helpful to?
It'd be hard to speak to.
Okay.
other folks, yeah.
Great.
What I'm really interested in is, like when I know my content inside and out, and I'm in front of an audience, what to be attending to, where my attention should be, as well as when I don't know my content quite as well enough, maybe I don't have it all scripted out quite as much, my cognitive load seems to go back to content, and I kind of start to tune that stuff out because I'm like too much over here. If you have any strategies for how to, even when I'm not 100%, ready, feeling ready, how to still make sure that I'm standing out here and doing it, even when I'm not fully prepared. Does that make sense? Like speaking extemporaneously, and not shut them out because I'm trying to like concentrate on what I want to say. How do I balance those two so that I maintain the connection with the audience?
Okay.
And letting the talk actually come from the audience rather than from your head. Like
See, that's a whole different,
that's
yeah,
the trick.
that's,
Yeah.
that's what I need to know about.
Because if you know your
Yeah.
content generally well enough,
Yeah,
I don't know how
Yeah.
to do this. Like that's
Yeah.
the question. I don't know how to do that, but that's what I'd love to get to that point of like,
yes.
yeah, let's co-create and
Right.
and relax into that.
Well, that's a little different than the main thing for camera. So let's see if we can get to that, though, if I can at least talk about that. So great. So thank you. I think, why don't we go ahead and put you on the hot seat. So
Do that now? Great.
yeah, do you need a minute to go through, review your stuff before we start?
Just like yesterday, yeah. Same way.
If you want to just take a minute and go through your,
Can we have our stuff up there?
I think you want to know things up there because
Well-
gesture
Yeah.
and holding your laptop or something. That's.
I would say you don't want to hold your laptop.
Right.
So if you need to, then do it. If you can do it without it, it's better. So yeah, and I'm gonna just have a bite of this while you're.
Yeah. There's
There's so much food
Dark
there.
And just so you know, the only thing you don't want to eat before you go to speak is chocolate.
Really?
It's bad for your throat. So most other foods are okay.
Probably candy corn is not so good.
I would probably avoid sugar, but can't in general.
You've done candy corn before.
No, I just think that's one of the most sugary things I can think of.
Oh,
That's why I said candy corn. Cotton candy, that's probably pretty good too.
Kale
It's fun
chips,
for
do
me.
they get
Yeah.
on your teeth?
Yeah, I know that. Any kind of bread.
Do we need to get them out of our computers,
Oh, what?
and the information that can be on our computers?
Yeah, just not holding it if you need it in front of you or something, so you can see gestures or how you're moving your hand. The content is not as important, guys. You just trust, talking about your course for a minute,
Yeah.
30 seconds to a minute.
I'll actually not really be looking at what you're saying.
Right.
Blah, 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 blah.
Pretty much do that.
But you do need to say something that's meaningful. Just know that I'm not worrying about the right word or.
Can I just talk about the course?
Yes.
Yes,
It doesn't have to be what I said yesterday.
absolutely. He'll
No,
just-
just 1 minute.
Yeah, let's do that.
He'll be like a person that's interviewing actors. Okay, that's complete. You're done. So
Yeah.
Keep talking until he tells you to stop.
Yeah, I might just. It'll probably.
Yeah, cut 'em off.
I'll cut you off if it's more than a minute and it's not you. Don't worry. So, is there a seat in back somewhere I can sit?
Yeah,
back.
absolutely. Yeah, let's do this. You want to sit or stand? Do you like sitting?
I prefer to sit actually.
Yeah, let's get you.
What are the things from out there?
This is the throne. We call this the throne.
All right.
Right there, you got this view. in the
Awesome.
house. Remember, you're on mic. So.
I'll chew loudly.
Somebody's check.
That was mine. Thanks.
Mine, I'll take it.
Thanks.
Okay, you ready?
Yep.
So as coaches, you know that your clients come to you for help. They're here and they want to be here. They want to achieve something or they want to stop having something in their lives. And your job is to help them go from here to there, from wherever they are to wherever they want to go. And along that path, they get stopped. They get distracted from the things that you've offered them to do, or they get stuck in themselves. They start resisting whatever it is they have to do to get there. And what I'm going to teach you is to go deep into the subconscious mind and find the core of that cause of whatever has stopped them or gotten them stuck. And there's a wide range of tools to do this. One of them is called the belief closet process.
Okay, just pause there.
Yeah.
You know what? I just realized we also talked about sitting in a chair, and I don't know if there's another chair. I don't know if we can set up and actually just looking at like a computer or camera or something to.
Would you prefer that? Is it? I mean.
It's actually helpful to do like 30 seconds of both.
Okay. Yeah. Great. And I can actually easily stand too.
So continue on with doing
Yeah.
sitting position. Good.
Actually, just start over.
Okay. Can I make a suggestion? Would you mind sitting a little closer? Because we're only using one mic. And we can hear you, but it would be better reception, better quality if you're a little bit closer.
Because that one's not good in the road.
That's a scratch mic. That's not going to. It's.
Like right here?
This is much better quality.
I'm gonna stand up anyway,
We
because I'll be
could
back.
pass the mic to each, but then we gotta pass it
Yeah,
back to
if you
him.
could just sit a little closer, that would be. We'll just get a better sound.
Okay.
Yeah, just come around.
So his mic can pick him up?
From here?
It's better than here. Put it that way.
Okay.
So, gentlemen, so this is talking into a
Yeah. Do you actually have a computer or some camera or something that he can look
Do you want,
into?
do you want me to add Zoom, or just so it actually has a camera, or just the
That's all right.
just
Just
the
the
web?
prop. Just the prop. We don't have to do this too. I think you just want to give him an essence in there.
Yeah, it is helpful
If
that.
you want it to
Yeah.
just be looking like this. is that-
Yeah.
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 Okay.
So what I do is I always make sure my camera is here, but that would interfere with.
I don't have anything to prop it.
But that's-
It's all right. Just emulate it the best that you can.
Yeah, that's good. So, as a coach, you want to be able to reach into that client's subconscious mind and find the cause of what is causing the resistance, what is causing the distraction, what is causing their just impossibility of moving forward. So I'm going to teach you a number of tools to help you move right into your client's core, right into the core of their consciousness, and discover what it is that is causing their inability to move forward. And once you do that, they will suddenly be able to zoom forward and accomplish all the things that you recommend they do.
Okay, that's great. All right, thank you.
Stay on the hot seat.
Awesome sauce.
No, I think let's go ahead. I'd like to see everyone
Oh,
actually.
good. And instead of giving feedback?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. You want to do half and half? Is that what you're saying? Half
Yeah,
standing, half sitting?
yeah.
Okay. All right, I'm here to introduce the Birch Method, which is my own method of bodywork system that I've devised out of my long-term immersion into my own body's wisdom. And the three keys to having a body that actually works is alignment, which is having your body follow its design as closely as possible. It's attunement, which is learning how to actually tune into your body so you can access that wisdom of the design. And then the third thing is to redirect the tension in your body so that you're not fighting your body at every stage. Those three things are key to having a body that not only works now, but is going to work long term your entire life and have the longevity, feeling good at every stage as you chronologically age.
Okay, great. Let's do it. Computer.
Oh.
She's seen herself?
Yeah. Having a body that works, like that's gonna be your key to living a long life, but also a happy and quality life that you want, so that you can have the richness that life offers you. And the three keys to doing that are the three fundamental principles of the Birch Method. And the Birch Method breaks down into three A's, three components. The first A is alignment. Alignment is that which works. It's that, when you follow your body's design, it just works. It's like if a plant doesn't have water, then it doesn't work so well. And when you give it water, it thrives. The second A is attunement.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well,
We need to be excited.
Yeah.
Excellent. Sorry, Lion. Well done.
cool. James.
Hi, my name is James Mayfield Smith. I'm founder of Breakthrough Circle. And today I want to talk to you about the first doorway in our Breakthrough Circle program, which is attune your presence, attuned presence. And if you're doing any type of transformation work, the very first thing that we need to look at is, where is my presence? And in order to expand our presence so that we can then hold more of the transformation that we're looking for. So I'd like to take a moment and just close your eyes if you would, and imagine a time when someone was very present with you. What was that like? How did they show up for you with presence?
Great. Okay, let's go to sitting.
So we'll often hear people talk about, oh, he's present, or he looks present, or he is or isn't present. But really, a better question is, what am I present to? Is my presence here with us in the present, or is it in the past with something else, or something that happened in the past, or is it in the future, or is it wrapped up in some emotional dynamic that is present for me that gets in the way of me being able to actually connect with a person, or to work with myself in this specific way.
Sorry. So we really need it to the computer only.
Oh, to the computer only, okay, got it, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just start from the top again, just do a little bit.
Okay. So one helpful question to ask is not whether or not I'm present, but what am I present to? Am I present to this now moment? Am I present to the task at hand, to the interaction with the person in front of me? Or am I present to maybe a memory or something from the past? Or maybe to the future and some worries or anxieties that I have? What am I present to? And how is that going to serve my intentions here?
Great. All right. Thank you. All right. Christina, do you want to do?
Is there more water?
Oh, yeah. Do you want Pellegrino? Is that okay?
It's all gone.
Hang on 1 second. Christina will get some water.
Thank you. The lights, the cameras, thank you so much. It reminds me always of that moment where you're behind the wings and you come out on stage. Yeah. It's a rush. Okay. Let's see, what was I going to talk about?
Yeah, that's.
Okay. So welcome everyone to Energy Body Mastery. Glad to have you join me here. I want to just do a quick course overview of what we're going to be looking at and help you understand a key kind of secret here. So the main pieces we're going to review in the course in the first week, we're going to talk about grounding. The next we're going to talk about the center channel, boundaries, and chakras. And everyone goes, oh, done that, I'm out of here. But what most people are taught to do is to visualize an ideal future state, right? Which completely ignores what's actually going on right now, which is all that really matters to us, is what's actually going on right now. And so what we're going to be working on is, yes, understanding an ideal future state, but also at the same time being able to tune in and say, what is my state right now? What's the gap? And the purpose of the course is give you a whole set of skills to close that gap so that you can ultimately get your real everyday self into that ideal future state. Not
Correct.
Just sit here and imagine it every morning, then go out and deal with the world exactly the way you did yesterday.
Great. Thank you. Let's switch.
Is it still on there?
Yes. Actually, I'm looking at the master dashboard.
Oh, yeah. Well, just start with video. There you go.
Sorry. There's like words on my face. Okay. Let's see. Where was I?
Just start at the beginning, actually.
Start at the beginning?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Welcome everyone to Energy Body Mastery.
So, and now let's do it to the computer.
All right. Body matters, I'm going. So welcome everyone to Energy Body Mastery. I'd like to do a quick course overview for you all. We're going to begin with grounding, second week, center channel, third week, boundaries, fourth week, chakras. And you're all like, oh, I already know all that. But what we're going to look at in this course is not just that imagined future state of ideally what you'd like it to be, but what is actually going on in your body right now. And to look at the difference between those two, to see that gap, and then the course is about many skills that you could use to fill that gap, so that you actually are living in that ideal future state and not actually just imagining it, and then going out into the day and living the next day exactly the way you did the day before.
Great, thank you.
Oh my, this is really impromptu.
Perfect.
So you're gonna get real off the cuff. See how I do, okay? Thank you for coming today. I want to start with 5 words: crazy, bad joke, scary, circus act, and interesting. Hardly 5 words we would use to describe the candidates of our latest presidential election, but that is the top 5 words that came out of people's mouths. We also had 2 candidates that were viewed unfavorably by half of the country. So the question is, who is teaching our children how to lead today? Where are kids getting their leadership skills from? If these are our role models, how are we going to teach them to step into who they are and who they can become? I wrote a book that I really wanted to research some of our great leaders and start sharing with people who these great role models are, so that our children, if you're in a house with a dirt floor in Africa, if you're a young girl in India who is not allowed to be married, or if you are the greatest leader in your high school class, can step into and become a great leader who is going to lead us to do better and greater things.
Great. Great. Well, let's switch now.
Hopefully none of my customers.
Okay, let me think a second. Welcome, teachers, to our workshop on teaching teens to lead. I think when we think about being a teacher, something happens to us at some point in our life where we wanted to, we got that feeling. We knew that something happened inside of us that taught us this is what we want to do. And we got on the right path of saying, how do I want to make a difference in a kid's life? So what I want to do first is just invite you to close your eyes and really think about that one person who made a difference in your life that put you on this track of where you're going right now.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Yay! Very inspiring. Thank you.
This was harder, wasn't it? It's
Oh,
not like when there's someone on the other end of Zoom, it's easier.
I know.
All right.
Well,
Oh. Yeah, yeah,
Stand if I use the chair.
yeah. That's,
Nervous for everybody else.
oh my
Yeah,
God.
nervous too. It's like-
all right. Yeah, so how was that?
It's different when there's someone back at the room grading you.
I
I was like,
know. Observe.
Oh, I hear it's hard when someone is in the back of the room supporting you.
yes, yeah. Thank you for that review. Thank you.
Yeah, so yeah, that sometimes does put people on edge. What else? How was it for you?
Hard to find the words.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing, I didn't feel prepared.
Mhm.
I didn't feel like I was really focusing much on you guys because I was trying to think of what to say.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So I lost my presence because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What else?
I really enjoy that eye contact.
I mean, with actual people?
Versus the screen. You mean?
Yeah, it's for me, it's a big shift to move out of live teaching.
Uh-huh.
Because a lot of teaching for me is question
Right.
Q&A, kind of, that shapes a lot of where a particular class goes and helps me know who the audience is and what level they want to learn at. And
Hmm.
everything online, just, that's largely gone. The eye contact, are they listening? And then you see all those little exclamation points go up, which shows they're not paying attention. Like on the screen, you're like, is anybody even listening to me? At least with the podcast, I don't have to care because I know they're not. You know, I just talk for an hour and they can listen to it whenever they want to. So it's just weird. There's a lot of weirdness with the technology, I guess is where I'm going with that.
Uh-huh.
For
Okay.
me,
Right.
relative to in person.
Hmm. Yeah. Let me just make a quick note of
I
something.
think also talking for this short period of time doesn't allow us to drop in,
Yes.
you know, so like after a certain point, we just be like, oh, I know this, oh, this is, like they're here and I'm here and it's okay.
Getting comfortable.
Yeah, it doesn't allow you to like
Mhm.
drop into the good place of just, where you're just talking. And you're, and, you know, there's a, for me, when I speak live, it feels like there's a separation. Like it just feels like I'm up here and they're out there and it just feels like I don't know how to bridge that gap.
When you speak live to a live audience?
Yeah. That's
And-
what I was talking about that one incident where I was
Right.
just like,
Is that true for you when you're on camera?
Facebook Live.
less so. I mean, because you get a little bit of feedback. You see the
Yeah, hearts.
hearts going across the screen.
Hmm.
I noticed that,
Yeah.
I noticed that my attention gets split, and part of my attention goes back onto me when I'm on camera. How do I look?
Uh-huh.
Coming across, it's like, and I get in that loop of thinking about how am I doing rather than presenting. When I'm in front of people and I'm just presenting, it's easier, or when I'm on audio and I'm not thinking about how I look, then it's easier for me to flow outward.
Right.
Mhm.
Anything else? Okay. So many good things to speak to. So let me. I've now notes scribble all over. Let me work backwards.
At some point for each of
Some individual and group techniques too. So first of all, generally I think that using video is better than audio in terms of like initial enrollment stuff. But however, if something is working for you, then you can go with what's working. I just have found much more of a trend toward video because it's much more personable, but if it's working for you, then I don't think you have to. Again, this is where it's like do whatever works for you. So I will say that, so a big part of my work in connection is you have to first be connected the right way with yourself first, and that rather than being self-conscious, it's self-supportive, and learning how to have that. This is a moment where you can use this as a way to have a better relationship with yourself. The way that I look at it, because it's, again, I look at speaking in whatever form as a peak experience with all our stuff comes up. and so like, oh, well, how can I have that level of self-care and appreciation and all of that stuff. So what you just named in terms of looking at yourself, I think comes up for a lot of people in a lot of different ways. So,
So would you be, just checking, would you be willing to do an actual laser round with each person rather than kind of weave it? Would that be okay? Because I think it'd be hugely valuable. I don't know if you're planning to do that, but would you be willing?
What I
like
think
30 seconds to each, here's what I saw and you can improve on, or no?
yeah, I can do that. I was going to do that later,
Yeah,
but I
know
could
they-
start
I
with
know
that.
they want it, I know I would want that.
Okay, cool.
Definitely.
All right, so let me just continue with Lion. So, and there's differences in terms of sitting and standing. So one thing that I saw for you that is with a lot of people is that sometimes if we don't have a stable base, and so your feet, the stable, actually this is better just do with everyone and show you right now. So if you can stand up, is just like we do in yoga, is have your feet parallel directly underneath your hips, like 3 to 5 inches apart.
That's my coach for all of this. This is my old base.
Right.
My base.
And if you can like feel your weight so that the weight is equal in terms of your balls and your heels of your feet, and that equal in the in and outside. So there's an exercise like ways to enhance that. But if you just like, you can just move around and just like feel that, and having that stable base for when you are standing, and just that foundation is, if we have our feet apart or something, then we end up swaying, which isn't really good nonverbal communication, or we could end up pacing, and it's better just like land. Now, you were really relaxed, which was great too, and so I would say is I would experiment for you, what is it like to just let yourself land, and then when you want to kind of move and be loose. So, but that real kind of landing and strength, now that's going to be really important in a different way on camera. But for just when you're standing, that's number one. Okay.
What was the feedback to me directly about that?
Just make sure you do that.
And what was?
It was just like, I couldn't see your feet, but it looked like from the way you're moving as your feet were probably like this, like that one was kind of open and a little farther apart, which just led to some shifting when standing. So now I don't believe that when you stand the whole time you should have your feet parallel. It's like, oh, there, like let yourself relax too, but this is kind of like a base position. There's a little more I use of like that I go into in terms of rooting the tailbone, coming up to the chest, letting the body be really relaxed and open, super relaxed. But the most important thing is just the feet to start off with. Yeah. Okay. And interestingly, you looked a lot more comfortable when you were sitting than when you were standing.
Really?
You were using more facial expressions. Your face was kind of stiff, and you started off, you have to think about what's the energy that you want to start off with. And so it was a little frozen when you were first standing, as opposed to like being warm, really like having that, like, it doesn't have to have a big smile, but just even like having that warmth come across. And I saw more facial expressions and warmth when you sat down, actually, and were just looking at the computer. So, and pausing is the way to get rid of ums. I'll come back to that. So, Aaron, also some fillers, the same thing with the feet. Do you want me to pause, or?
Battery based, or is it take a pause?
The electricity's still on.
Just keep going. The light really did drop though.
All right. Well, should I just keep going for now? All right.
Are you still rolling, Alan, or not?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So some the same thing with the feet and the fillers. Your hands were a little closed, like I mentioned, like a little closed off, as opposed to, it didn't look bad, but having a little more open. There's a gesture technique which where you want to start with your hands relaxed at your side, rather than we kind of tend to do this often, which kind of blocks. And from here, you can do lots of gestures. So I'll see if I have time to go into the end, but I want to more so show you gesturing for on camera for everyone as well, because that's the most important thing for, I think, for today. There was a way in which, when you were speaking, that it almost looked fake. Like it didn't have, you didn't feel as like dropped in, and I think that's what you were talking to as far as that. But it was also kind of like, almost like a little too smiley, and I wanted to feel you drop more into your core, into your tailbone, into your back, and just like that rooting, that deeply grounding and rooting, and just like finding that deeper power in when you were speaking from there. So, and so we just have to make sure that when we're smiling, it's coming from a place of connection, rather than having to, like, trying to be positive. And so that comes with like making sure we're connected with our heart and that genuine love that's really shining forth, rather than emulating it. For James, there are some needing improvement with gestures. I think there's also, it's a bigger project, but there's a bigger full, well, no.
I know I wasn't very.
No, it's not that.
Yeah.
No, I was going to say is that you have more, you have more vocal resonance at your disposal than is currently coming out. So that growing resonance that's a bigger project just for anyone who wants to do that. Anyone can do that, but it just takes a couple of months to learn how to grow that.
Okay.
So
So
Resonance as in a vocal.
As in, yeah, that vocal resonance. It's a lot easier to coach body language than, like the voice takes a little bit longer to really inculcate that.
Registers, that kind of stuff.
It has to do with relaxing how we hold tension in the neck. It has the diaphragmatic breathing. So there's a relaxation, breathing, connecting the breath to the voice, opening up that fuller resonance. People, I mean, it's a little less now because some stuff people love my voice. I'm like, yeah, I did a lot of training. So that's what I shortcut for everyone is you can get that in a couple months if you want
You do
that.
have such a nice voice.
Oh,
I
thank you.
noticed it, even though you're stuffed up.
Thank
Can
you.
I ask a question?
Yeah.
So in terms of like really like getting this stuff in, like when I get up to speak, I know a lot of the stuff.
Yeah.
I know a lot of the stuff. I've heard it in various different ways from different people over years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing it. So what's that gap?
So there's a difference between, I mean, I don't know if this is the answer for you, but in general, there's a difference between knowing and having it integrated.
Right. That's exactly what I'm
Right.
saying.
So the way that I train people is that you have to practice, like, do you know about habit building practices? Like the essence of it is that you have to learn a little bit at a time, integrate it, and then you can do more after that. So that's what I teach is, like, just like, for example, where I start off with most people is just learn how to relax, how to breathe, ground, and relax, and to do that throughout the day for like a week or two. And that once you have those in your system, then you can layer on top of that things like how to stand properly. But if you're standing or moving in a way without relaxing, then it gets forced and weird. So, and also how you have to be relaxed and relax the neck before you can start to bring the breath up to the voice to start to grow the resonance. So the way that I teach in my system is practice twice a day for like the particular exercises, wherever we're on, for like 5 or 10 minutes twice a day. I call those power practices, and then you do habit builders throughout the day so that whether you're sitting in a meeting or you're speaking or in the grocery store, that you can just do these things. So you have to like grow these as habits that become part of your life, because it's never knowing what to do, it's that you have it at your disposal. Now, there's the other thing where that goes to, one of the big things I want to talk about today is how do you prepare and warm up. Obviously, this is not an optimal circumstance. You're just asked to do it. You didn't have a lot of practice. And so I know you're not going to be at your absolute best. I'm not looking at you as this is your like shining example and this is like thrown on the spot.
It's not our benchmark.
Yeah. And so, but it is but often people don't warm up and prepare enough. So I can talk to you about that a little bit more in a bit too. So, and that is really important.
When you say practice,
Yeah.
are you practicing speaking? Like what? Like you're saying practice relaxing. Is it just relaxing or is it relaxing and speaking?
Well, the way that, so I separate things out. Like in Clean Your Voice, my online course, people don't even start speaking until week 4 out of 10. I mean, and speaking, I mean literally making words out of your mouth with addiction enunciation techniques. It's like I start off with like inner work, the relationship to the self, compassion work. Level 2 is just literally just learning how to relax wherever you are, like anywhere, and then applying that grounding like to and really deepening that. And then you can do it for speaking. So before you get to speaking, make sure you have that at your disposal. Now, I tend to work with a lot of people who've done a lot of growth work, and yet it's always, well, when do we lose that? And so how much do we come back to that? So then we eventually grow that into all of the speaking like that, but it's even breaking it out of that. Just how relaxed can we be no matter where we are?
Well, I work at that a lot,
Yeah.
but it's not showing up in my speaking.
I'll put you back up here in a second.
Okay.
Actually, no, let's put you up here now. All right. So, did you go through Thrive?
Yeah.
That also means you had a particular level of training and role models. I mean, not that you weren't speaking before, but who do things in a way that, like, I really like Cheryl and Jesse, but I think this stuff is fairly contrived and enforced. So if, for you, can you focus on your tailbone? And just feel some weight and let it drop.
That goes really counter to my system.
Mm-hmm. Would you be willing to try it?
Yeah.
Okay. Kind of to your system that you teach, you mean? Or?
Yeah, my tailbone lifted is exactly where I want people, where I want my own body. Because of the relationships, but I'm willing to try.
Okay. Just give it a try first.
Feels wrong.
Cool. So that's great to notice that. And you can come back and never do it again after 2 minutes from now. So can you feel weight in your body, more importantly? Can you let yourself be heavy? And can you hold your arm? You can try this if you like, and just let it drop. So feeling like just movement weight down is the most important thing. And just shake it out a little bit. And you can, you're welcome to do this alone if you like. Let the jaw drop a little. Find a nice deep diaphragmatic breath. Great. And then just try saying, hi. Now I just want to say I'm shortcutting many steps of technique and trying to get to a point. So the most thing is feel the weight. Let your neck relax more. And just try going, hi.
Hi.
And now do that, but project your voice out a little bit more.
Hi.
Good. Great. Now there's also some tension in the TMJ area that can be released a little more, that allow that to open more, but that's really good. And can you now, like from that, can you just try doing from here? From here is like just look at different people and have real curiosity about each person, like just wondering like what's going on for each person in their lives. And when you look, point your nose directly at them. And you can nod if you want, but you don't have to. You can just look and be really interested, really wondering what's happening for them. And how much you can honor their experience and appreciate them. Okay, could you start your talk now that you did before?
The 3 core principles of the Birch Method are alignment. And alignment really speaks to the body's design. And when you honor the design, it lasts longer, feels better, and serves you the way that it's supposed to.
How did that feel?
Slow.
How else?
Heavier. I can so this is what happens for me is that I start to want to leave my body.
Right.
Yeah.
Can you get some feedback of how that was?
Yeah, I thought it was more grounded,
Yeah.
and the slow really served you. Even if it felt too slow to you, I could track you better and felt you in your body more. Thank you.
You appeared more like an expert right off the bat, more like competent. I got a better sense of competence, I think, from that slowness and that groundedness, believability.
And it's not that you need to go that slow,
Yeah.
but the which of the two engenders more trust?
This one.
This one.
So yeah, I mean, it was okay to err on the side of this because you want to find that quality. And by the way, I don't normally talk about weight in the tailbone. I have no idea why that came up for you intuitively. So I talk about sometimes of tucking and finding like different postures thing, but I have no idea why that came up intuitively for you. So more so that heaviness is like that level of feeling you there. I was like, oh, now I really want to hear what you're saying.
Okay.
Because your experience comes out of your path with your own body.
Right.
I feel like you're speaking from that place immediately the second time. From that
deep well of wisdom versus talking about that well of wisdom.
Right.
Which it felt more like in the first time.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
It's your embodiment of
You
your,
were in the well.
yeah.
Yeah, well, that's always that's the trick for me in speaking, is I want to get disembodied. Like
Yeah.
like there's a real pull, I can feel it.
Totally.
And it's frightening to me because I don't want to be in that place. And at the same time, I don't know how to get into connection with my own body so that I can get in connection.
Exactly. Well, you said that right, is that more connection you have with yourself, the more that you can have with others. But that's why we just starting off, like literally I would say for you, is the first thing I would do is probably for 2 weeks is just practice like having that a little level of heaviness, a little slower groundedness. And it's also, notice what I said too, this is really important, to feeling your back. Is that energetically what happens when we are nervous is or focus on audience is we are leaning forward a little too much in our energy. And so it's like we're here rather than like settling back into ourselves. And so like focusing, I have different tools this, but the shortcut is like focusing on your back there, that heaviness, and then there's other things we can do as far as like the heart and connection. But when you're in that space and that level also then of like really witnessing, acknowledging, and out of like, oh, I need to speak now.
Yeah, that's exactly the mode I get into. My brother has a saying that says that when you're talking about people that Lion was referring to earlier, the people that he's jealous of, like the big people, my brother says, and he's worked with all these people, like he's been in the New Age space forever, and he knows all of the big names.
Yeah.
And he said, the back is as big as the front, which is like the unacknowledged back.
Right.
Like so I like that you said that, because that way I'm speaking from back here. I'm speaking from the back rather than just presenting the front.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, it's also part of like being there for yourself rather than
Yeah.
just, so yeah, great. Can we give her a hand, because that was really awesome.
Really, well done.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
didn't get to say this, but the quality that you had was gravitas, right?
Yeah.
Gravitas is a great word because it comes from gravity and the grounded.
Yeah, it was such a different quality. Yeah, and like, yes, integrate that, layer in other skills, layer in tempo variation. But letting yourself that slow, I was just like, I loved it, that second one. And yeah, we'll bring other things, but really great bass.
And also, I'm in the habit of really defaulting to smiling.
Right,
So, yeah, I didn't smile that much the second time.
right. But the thing is where a smile emerges, is like where that comes from. So smiling is awesome, but we also want it to come from a place of like this, like deep connection and heart and warmth, and not acting like it. And so, and you have no shortage of warmth, like beautiful, genuine smiles. But we go into speaker modes sometimes when we're experienced. So, okay, I would like to work with you for another hour, and I have to go on. So
Christine and
yeah.
April and
yeah,
You finished with James though?
no. So
all right, great.
so by the way, I loved how you said we are present to something. I talk about that too. So I was like, so yeah, making sure like gestures have to happen inside the frame of the camera, and so it's really useful when you're working to see yourself and to position the camera, that you have to make sure your gestures can be seen when you want them to be seen.
Side two.
Yeah, they were a little too outside, or I saw you down here and I knew that they wouldn't be showing up on the camera. Because I do a lot on Zoom. And so here we could be talking about Zoom. Obviously there's a difference as far as when you see yourself and where to look, but also when you're doing your any video work.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Jonathan. When I'm doing interviews on Zoom,
Yeah,
I tend to bring the camera close so that my face is bigger in the camera, but I can adjust the camera so that it's
right.
further back. Is there an optimum place on a Zoom interview?
I like to do a little more so we can have some gestures in there. And also it means it depends a little, if it's Zoom, like that can be really close up. And so I like to have a little more gesture room, but I don't know if there's a perfect way. Personally, I have that preference for some gestures, but I'm not tied to that. If you feel like it's better for some reason that you have that level of close-upness, then I don't object to that, but I would experiment with playing with some more gestures and have room for that. So, So James, one thing that I saw for you also was that you looked a lot more comfortable just talking to people, and even to the point where you didn't want to talk to the screen. And that there's this, sometimes that I had the, I kind of imagined into it that it might have felt kind of very constricting to talk to there. There's one of my favorite sayings is how we find freedom within structure. That it can feel really confining and limiting, but actually within that, then you can look at how much can I play within that particular structure. So you can experiment and see all that you can do, and which both could be how you change the camera angle, but also like what are all the things that you can play with and nuance that you can have. Like if on a mic, then I can do all sorts of different things with my voice that I can't do live, and vice versa. So
It's more like I didn't have anyone to connect to, which took away some of my presence.
right. So here, obviously, there isn't anyone there live. So let me just, it's kind of fun actually peppering in some techniques as we're going around. So if you have your, do you have, is everyone, who doesn't have a computer here now?
I only have a
iPad.
iPad. Okay. So if you have one, go ahead and open it. And if you have Zoom, you can also open that.
Or Skype, right?
Yeah, yeah, something where,
Or even photo booth.
all right. So, is everyone ready? Or almost?
I don't know what I'm going to be able to do.
Yeah, so it is great to be able to lift the camera up if you have something. When I'm doing calls that matter, I usually am boosting it up. I also use an external camera. That's a lot. The cameras for Macs are not super high quality. So I mean, my Mac's a little bit older at this point, but still. So I have an external which also lifts it up a little bit higher because it's boost on. And so I think mine is it's a Logitech, and the externals have such better quality. And also with mine, then I can zoom the camera in and out and stuff. So I highly recommend having an external clip-on. So as you are, so there's a lot to look at, and it's extra distracting, and we just like know this is part of it. So if you can, first of all, just look at the camera.
The actual green dot, right?
The actual little dot, the green dot, and then allow yourself to kind of look down at yourself or where there might be other people on there. And now just like go away, if you can just skip to another window so you can't see yourself anymore. Okay, so from there now, just look at the camera. And the key is, this is I think a little harder with this type of camera than it is if you're looking at a real camera. So if you just look at it like you're talking to someone, just like looking at the camera, you're looking at something black. And now imagine like you're looking through the camera as if it were like a portal, and there are people through it on the other side. It's almost like this tunnel. And picture someone who either you have worked with before, a favorite client, or someone maybe who you are hoping to become a client, like someone very specific, and imagine that their face is through this little tunnel on the other side.
Is their face like really tiny on the other side?
It's like a tunnel, and then their face, their full actual person, like they're a real person alive. And that when you talk, you are almost like having to do a little more facial expressions because you're talking, you have to make sure it gets to them through the tunnel. So just try like, see if, I don't know if this will be too hard but see if you can, everyone at once, just try like saying one or two of your lines, everyone is speaking at the same time, as if you're talking to them, looking at the camera.
Wow, so
Thanks for being here, and
great to have all of
looking
you.
so forward to working with you.
And just take something notes because
Great. And now really even more think that I'm like sending my energy through time and space to you, even to someone watching a recording. And try it again.
Are we exaggerating a lot?
Yeah, exaggerate, just to energetically intend, like I am sending this to you.
So I'm so excited
So
to hear.
thank you.
I can't wait to dive
I'm
into
being
the
here
program.
today. We're really excited about everything we can cover. I think you're going to get a lot out of today and what we're going to be doing. So you'll be able to continue to
All right.
move forward.
How'd that feel?
Warmer.
Yeah, definitely better.
Warmer. I tended to try to do that. I was leaning in more. So just to know that,
Yeah.
my energy had to be more rather than try to send the energy from that place.
Yeah.
Again, that forward energy through the camera.
Yeah, so it's that energy of like, I'm like, and it's very like, I have the intention, like I'm reaching you, I'm connecting with you in a way that we probably are more likely to in conversation with someone. And so that's why it's helpful to imagine someone in particular that it could even be you could even imagine someone like a friend who, like I can think of a particular friend who when I'm, like certain friends we're funnier with or they evoke different things, we're really comfortable. Like picture that friend or that person that like evokes those things from you. That would be a way to do it.
To me, it feels like the difference between just doing Qigong and doing Qigong that has a contemplation. So you're adding this mind piece to
Right.
the thing that you're doing and then syncing them up.
Yeah, there's an intention.
Yeah.
And that intention is about that connection and impact.
It's like giving the mind the right job.
Right, exactly.
versus
Very well
letting it do
stated.
whatever it thinks it wants.
Right. Yes, and it's moving beyond talking at. So go ahead and if you can skip back now to your Zoom screen where where you now have to deal with seeing your own face or other people's faces.
Jonathan, while we're doing this, would you speak to Chris's point about leaning in versus being?
Well, so I would say first of all, so I didn't address posture yet. So for sitting, it's just like make sure you're like sitting upright, not slouched back. I like to be sitting a little forward in the chair, like not with back against, and so but relaxed. So very kind of like similar to standing. It's like you're not going to slouch here. It's very upright but really relaxed. So if you just want to try that posture first of all, and from here you can sometimes forward, like you can move. The main thing is like upright, but you have to be relaxed. You're not being scolded or graded or checking your posture. It's just like imagine for you, like letting your heart shine. Like it's your heart forward, like that you are really connecting from your heart, which could be physically moving your heart forward a little bit. And then try it again now. So looking at the camera and with the same intention.
Yes, thank you
Good
for
to
all
see you
being here. It's really exciting to have you as a part of the program.
Thank
It is
you.
my quite a journey together.
We have a lot that we've done today and talk about forward to working with each other.
All right, great. And once more with gestures.
Yes, we're gonna make it happen. We're gonna make it happen. We're gonna go through the blocks. We're gonna hold you
So
back.
they're actually gonna be like
Yes, we're gonna
things
remind
that create the worthiness of living.
All right. So getting somewhere. How's that feel?
More fun.
Uh-huh. Yeah, if you're having fun, that often helps.
Yeah.
Even with a really serious topic, that it's still good to smile some. So, I mean,
So to answer your question, my experience is just remembering his back, kind of really staying with my heart is moving for the energy is moving forward, but not, I don't have to like create the movement with my body forward as long as I'm extending my energy. But I want to do that to like get more connection. I want to lean into it, and I don't think that serves. It's like it's more, I'm not relaxed into my back.
yeah.
I tend to stand whenever I'm delivering, either by phone or by video. So I have the camera up here,
Okay.
standing up. And what I notice when I'm instance, I'm doing a lot of this swaying back and forth because I'm, sort of in a flow.
Mm.
That's not appropriate when there's a camera on.
Yeah, it's not, and I would have to see you in all the different circumstances to coach you a little more directly, as far as like to really see what's going on. But whether I wouldn't know how to coach you with more detail. So
I'm sure there's a lot more questions, but can we make sure we finish?
that's why I want to move on. So let's go on to Christina. So first of all, like I really appreciated your speaking style. Like you had a really nice level of relaxation. Again, I thought maybe you're just checking the feet position to use that some as well. But you had really nice vocal variation, which was great, like tempo, pitch, volume variation, and pausing. And that seemed fairly integrated. And I would just say is make sure that you were warming that up beforehand. So I'll talk about a warm up in a second. So, and sometimes your facial expressions came and went. So sometimes it was there, and so warming up the face is also really important. And because we often, when we're a little nervous, one of the ways that the freeze response shows up is in like the face doesn't move. And so a quick warm up, again, this is something that one of the exercises, I call it facial aerobics or facial asanas. So if you lift your eyebrows up high, and as high as you can, and then down, good, up, down, and then one up or something else. Play around, we can have a lot of fun with it. Wrinkle the nose, stretch it down. Good, cheeks up, cheeks down. Doing this a little faster time, but cheeks, lips around, lips pursed, smile, frown, and pucker, back. So you can do all sorts of stuff, and then you can just play with like you have to. This is one of the things to warm up. So. Like first, the way I teach is you have to learn the exercise, you have to practice and integrate it, and then you have to warm it up before you speak so that it's actually alive. And it's reintroduced and there in your system. So the way that so it's like first, learn the techniques. Second, integrate them by practicing them daily, a few at a time, and then you have to warm it up before you go to speak. I'll also mention too that whenever you're speaking in any format, that at any time you can just hit the restart button by saying, oh right, I said some so let me remember the technique to stop doing that. So you just bring it in rather than, damn it, I was doing that. So be an ally, not a critic. And
that's the t-shirt for
so, and I would say when you were sitting especially is that, because you looked less comfortable when you were sitting with all those things, and you also kind of went fast. So just like, make sure you have that like grounding, slowing down, taking your time, that intention to connect, warmth. The other thing too is just keep in mind that the trust level, anything over the internet is like 1/10 of what it is in person, roughly.
Okay.
Is that there's so much crap and scams on the internet, and people's trust level is so low, and people can just like leave that whenever they want, is that we have to be in like a highest integrity and comfort too, but also that if we're too polished on there when you're on video, it will look fake, and it's better to be a little more real and say, hey, how's it going? So if you have to look at your notes saying, let me just want to make sure I covered everything. Yeah, okay, got it, cool. Like you can be real. And people generally want that. If someone doesn't, it's probably because their own projection of their own insecurities that are being put out. So, I am a favor that it's better to be human and still be polished and prepared and ready. But it's okay to be like human there, and it's more interesting. And
It goes for live as well.
it does go for live too. Yeah. And so make sure that you have that connection of just taking the time and like having that intention. I'm really connecting with you, and you can even the same things that we would do with a person of saying like I may just look around and like check it, how's that going? You can look in and look at the camera and say, does that make sense? Good. Okay. So, and
If you have that imaginary person at the other end of the tunnel, that's easier.
right. Well, also if you're on Zoom, you can see their faces. You may just look down and check their faces. Does that? And so I also like to do a lot of interaction when I'm doing Zoom. I'll ask for shows of hands. Just like lift your hand up if you like, can I just, who's this, or when someone shares something, does that resonate with anyone here? Is that just raise your hand or nod your head? And so I will find ways to create engagement all of the time. And Aaron, that also goes back to a question that you had before in terms of bridging that gap, is really like that deep receiving, the whole flow of connections, like connect with yourself. Again, this is a more refined system, but the essence of it is stay connected with yourself, deeply receive them, tuning in, do a different engagement by asking them things, and checking in and doing it that way. So, April. Feet again, the same as others. I would say is that I definitely think there's too much tightness happening in the throat, and we can bring in, I would love to see some more resonance and opening, more facial expressions as well. And also, let's see, could you stand up for a second? Is she in shot too for a camera, or does she need to come up here? Okay. All right, so can you lift your shoulders up high and then just drop? There you go.
Like that.
Yeah, because your shoulders kind of got, they were really high when you think so. And that happens often for a lot of people with attention. And so doing like with her, if you're able to, that dropping or rotating and opening, just that loosening is something that's really important for you, for most people really. And it was interesting, you were there was the shoulders, but also a little wiggly. And so it's like relaxing, but then just being solid and grounded too, and growing the diaphragmatic breath. I would also say for you, a lot of the releasing the TMJ tension is helpful. So, and I'm just looking for things I wanted to go through that I haven't yet. Any questions at the moment?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Often when I'm speaking to something I have a lot of passion about, which is mostly what I bother to talk about, and I see this also with you, right, is I often get teary. And so, which is, I'm getting more and more okay with.
Uh-huh.
But can you just speak to that? When you're speaking about things you're really passionate about, the emotions arise even when you're really grounded in it, because it's a big deal.
So are they coming up is it just a briefly, or is it stay there and you can't get it stopped?
It's just coming up briefly as a sense of the size of the moment. That
Right.
You're not so much like I'm now in an emotional thing, it's more just the bigness of it.
I think if it's a little bit, that's fine. And for when I've had clients who it comes up and they can't get it to stop, then I have to do some refined technique work for it. Yeah, but I would also say is, like I would kind of almost need to see it happen to look at if anything is needed.
Okay, so an example is a lot of times I do invocations, beginning and closing, or maybe some sort of thing that's a little more like a prayer than a visualization in the middle, because
Yeah.
a lot of the shamanic work, and often in the middle of that, it gets really big, especially when I'm really connecting with the people that are on the call, and it's just emotional in the bigness of it, not as in the feelings, but more just the,
Right. And what's your sense of what happens for everyone there when that happens?
and my feeling is it's actually happening for everyone there.
Okay, if it's
Part of
happening
what's
for
happening is
everyone.
that it's sort of channeling through me, and I become a volcano, but I'm supposed to keep speaking.
Right.
You know?
So I think generally it's okay to have that come up for a bit. The only time that it's not as good for is like when the speaker, when the speaker has it, but people don't feel connected to it. And they're like, sometimes people are like, well, I have to show a vulnerable moment because they've been taught that, and they show something, but it doesn't actually reflect what the audience is going through. It doesn't connect, and then it's just off. So I don't sense that's happening, but I think as a principle, it's okay for you. The one thing I want to talk about how we create meaning. And so that could be in like what we see in their facial expressions or in terms of like engagement. And we can create stories that don't work for us. So like I'll just give one example that I got my start in high school and college speech competitions. And when I was 14, and then I also was doing theater in high school and college too, and majoring in it. But in these competitions that I did for years, and then eventually coached for years, and is that I would be I remember like in college that I could have a judge who would just be like really encouraging and smiling, and I get my ballot back afterwards, it'd be last place. And someone else would be there like, and afterwards it'd be like, that was the most amazing speech I've ever seen. Like you don't know what's going on for people and what's happening for them in their lives, and so they could just be tired, or we don't know, or in pain. So not to construct negative meaning based upon that, and that we can just ask questions like is this hitting home, or I just wanted to check in with you, or so obviously this depends on audience size and format, but but I would say is you can, if you see everyone, one signal I'll give, by the way, that's easy to tell. If you see people, well, this is more for live, but if you see everyone kind of wrestling and starting to cough or become more self-aware, it usually means you're losing them. And you have to change something. So changing meaning, use different dynamics or how you're speaking. So, but it's always just be okay to check in. How is this landing? Like, is this new information for you, or is this insightful, or does this feel a little more like, or what's been most helpful? Like, there's lots of things that you can just like check in and ask.
I notice that as an audience member on a Zoom call, I will take my camera off of me because I'm always multitasking, and I know that's going to be a distraction for the speaker.
Right.
It looks like I'm not paying attention. The truth is, I'm not giving them all my attention.
Right.
I'd rather put my my freeze frame photo up there so that they know I'm present at least partially, rather than
Right.
actually taking attention away from me.
Yeah, well, then that's good things. If you want people to engage when you do it, then you have to look at what comes up for you with that. So,
Yeah, I think something that's important for me here is that I could be in a large room and hone in on that one person that's like this, and I can make a whole story that moves me off my center from one person in the audience.
Right.
That I'm making a story of, not even the whole audience.
Right.
I have to be very careful that my radar doesn't hit that person that has something going on in their life that I don't know, but I make it about me.
Exactly, or they're triggered and whatever, people get triggered.
Right.
Yeah.
Is it helpful to like have these made up stories? Oh, he must be fighting with his wife. I mean, is that part you recommend?
I instead more just have the intention of like, how can I love this person? And how can I speak more to them? So like, here's the thing is that when you're the speaker, you're in charge. And we usually put the audience in charge by worrying too much about their reactions or the size of the audience. And this is also where I work with things like masculine and feminine principle, yin and yang. And so they need someone to hold the space, which is actually both masculine and feminine in different ways, and to be there. But often speakers, we put them in charge in different ways. And so it's a flow of energy where we are receiving and we're taking in, and that informs what we do. So it's not dominating them, it's there in service. But you have to decide, oh, well, how can I love that person more? How can I check in what's needed? And then, well, you know what, I don't know what that one, so I'm just going to speak to everyone else right now, and that's okay, and no one knows I have this inner dialogue going on. So, yeah.
That's good.
I appreciate how you go back to like care. I mean, it's like it's different than some of the other things I've heard before. How you go back to that. And
Yeah. Well, it's also ultimately is like our intention is essential, and so like even if we're there making an offer, is like you only want the right people to sign up with you, because otherwise it's going to be a pain in the ass. You know, like they're going to get refunds and be unhappy and be more work for you. So for me, it's like, how do I want to sell? I want to be of service. So having that correct intention that is freeing and opening and comes from the heart for the right people to sign up, and that invitation rather than pitch. So those are some things I think about. I want to talk, because we're kind of running out of time.
We are about 5 minutes.
Okay, yeah. I really want to talk about preparing and warming up. So I've covered most of the key things, and of course, I would prefer to have 3 more hours, but so in terms of warming up, that I would say just first of all is that as a performer, that we're going to do a good hour warm up before we go perform. And before speaking, this is how people normally warm up. Like, all right. Yeah. Speaking is an embodied act. You have to bring it into your body. So if it's something that's really important, then you have to be not just like warming up right before, but like many times. Most important thing, speak out loud full volume with everything that you would normally do when you speak. That means speak with facial expressions, gestures, like practice. If you're doing it for a camera, you're not comfortable with that, then practice with the camera and the computer. If you have to, like, get a bunch of friends or get this group to do a practice run with you, so that you have this, like, people to on screen if you're doing a Zoom call and you're not used to that. Like, get used to the actual format. It's kind of the same thing that for speaking live, I often say practice at least in the shoes that you're going to wear. Or maybe even if it's a different type of, if you're wearing a suit or a different type of dress or whatever than you normally do, then practice in that so you get comfortable with that. It will put you in a different mode and mood. So for same thing with the computer, get used to that. So that's just like one in general. Don't make any changes if you can for content for a day or two before. Just like you saw today, is that when you're focusing on the words, it's hard to focus on everything else. Sometimes we have to do things last minute based on multiple factors. If you can avoid it, do. The biggest thing that I found out that would hurt my competitors, I had state and national champions in speech competitions. The thing that would hurt them the most is if we made last minute changes. So that we basically, at least 2 or 3 days before would be the last time I would even give them any coaching. So they just get, the most important thing is that you were comfortable and relaxed. So the things that I look at for warm up, you have to be warmed up physically, like stretch, relax, get your body loose, get your breathing. Warm up vocally, so all the different vocal exercises that I teach, that's a little longer thing for the moment, but of how you really waken your voice. So that would be like waking up your enunciation, which is also about impact, your volume, all those different vocal dynamics. That, especially like Christina, I think embodied the best today. And like waking all those things up, waking up your facial expression. So the body language, like just get in the mode of doing that. Waking up the connection skills and remember, all right, okay, I'm thinking about a million things. I have to actually practice beforehand and prayer by myself, looking into Zoom at the camera and practice that whole thing of doing that. And being distracted with a picture below. Like, just practice that beforehand. You also have to do an emotional warm-up. Confidence is about being vulnerable and being seen and trusting you can handle anything that happens. So how do you warm yourself up for that? I have tools, and I know all of you have your own tools that you can approach for that as well. So, and then of course, with the content, be comfortable with that. One tip for content that's very helpful is that it's, especially for something that's longer, which is a subjective, longer for some is more than 5 minutes, but certainly when you're going into a half hour, Zoom call or whatever, is practice a small amount at a time, get comfortable with that, just like a minute, sometimes even a sentence, and do that like minute or 5 minutes if it's a really long thing, like several times in a row, get comfortable with that chunk. And then you can get comfortable with the next chunk and then add it together. If it's really important, do small chunks and get super comfortable with each one and then put them together. So in that way, if you have an outline, that you can just practice that section like over and over and then get comfortable with the words, find a new rhythm for that, find how you would speak that organically and not like from the kind of scripted out written thing. Yeah, so again, like any art and science, there's a lot of stuff, and I've dumped a lot at you. You're welcome to, if you would like to, if you may want more help, you can talk to me about it and have me do a consult with you. So, and direct you in the right place with me or someone else. So, I'll just say the easiest way to do that, chatwithjonathan.com. So, and that's Jonathan, Jonathan.
Question.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert in this at all, but what I found when I do prepare, what helps me, and I just want your take on it, is I'll take my content without even looking at it. I'll video me just extemporaneously talking about it, and then I'll take that, because that's my natural style, and I'll use that to make my speech, because I feel like it's more, rather than starting from like written. Is that something that Does that make sense? I mean, it makes sense to
Yeah,
me, but I'm not an
It does, and that's what I'm saying in terms of the outline, is like knowing the main points that you want to hit. That also could include, by the way, an inspiring quote or statistics. You may have even a few sentences scripted and then the rest. But otherwise, though, is like recording yourself speaking in your normal style is really good, because that's going to bring you back to how you are when you're relaxed and you're not trying to follow a particular
And then I add in
formula.
the details that I left.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
I'd have to look at it in detail to check, but as a principle, that's great.
Okay.
I'll also say too, by the way, is like what we did here is the fast version. Like with a client, I start off with a 35-point assessment. So like the level of detail, but I always look for here, what is the most important fast thing that's going to get some fast results? And so that's what we are doing. So these things should take you somewhere. Any other last questions before we, okay. Yeah, Lion and then Aaron.
I have seen a pattern in myself where before a high stakes presentation, my throat just starts getting really tight.
Mm-hmm.
And I have tried lots of different things to figure out what's causing it, how to relax it. And I can't find it because I can feel something gripping in my throat. Do you have any suggestions?
It's part of the freeze response. And it generally also causes people's voices to get tighter or higher as well. So the way that I have different things that I do just in terms of like bouncing and moving around and letting go, but it also connects with the breathing. I like to refer to, my work is very somatically based, so tension is misplaced support is the way that I look at that. It's just trying to protect and hold and support. And so it's learning to like trust, drop into your core, and then and letting and teaching that to let go. So that's the fast
I
answer.
like that.
Yeah, Aaron?
Have you done preparation with people for TED Talks?
Yeah. Yeah, I've helped craft several. So some it's a lot of, helping them write it, very detailed, and others it's
More presence and presence.
yeah, both. I do a lot of work with the actual words. Yeah. I've crafted, I mean, when I'm crafting someone craft a talk, I expect them to get a standing ovation. So it's always my goal. So, yeah.
So you said speaking is embodied act, tension is misplaced support. What are any other like great quotes? So I just like get that. Yeah.
Yeah, Benderism.
Yeah.
One of my other favorites is that when you are growing your vocal dynamics, people often say, oh, that's not natural. And I say, no, that's habitual. So it's what are your habits? What is your habitual voice, not your actual voice? Your actual voice for most people is more resonant than it appears. When you were a baby, you could breathe incredibly deeply diaphragmatically and belt out lots of loud sounds. That got constricted as the identity forms. And so we're coming back to like, this is your natural state of finding that relaxation, your real full voice. And so when you do that, however, you may feel like this isn't really me. Like, oh, well, I don't normally do that. That's not natural. And let's say, well, that's not who you thought you were. So it's growing into this bigger sense of self. So another quote that I say is that enhancing self-expression is a process of self-expansion. When we open up our voice and our self-expression in new ways, we grow ourselves as well. So it's also, that's part of the way my work is some deep growth work.
Enhancing self-expression is what?
Is also self-expansion, is a process of self-expansion.
And last question, I have no idea how affordable voice coaches are, and this might not be the right time for that. But I'm at risk of going home and never calling you again because of that. So I'm just curious, what does it cost to get a 35-point assessment and just some like tips or something? Is that an appropriate question?
Sure. So first of all, I normally do assessments as part of a coaching package, but I would do it on its own for this group. I do several different types of offerings. So I will do workshops sometimes that are sliding scale or not. The workshops can range from 400 to 1,500. I do think it's important to integrate the skills. Claim Your Voice, the online course, is $997, which is a 10-week training. If you want to see that, it's claimyourvoicenow.com. And that's also, by the way, the 3.0 version of the course, and it's fully gamified, and I've revised that over the years, just in terms of the scope of online courses. So we've had, I think, a few hundred people go through it at this point. So that's $97. Private coaching depends on the package. So for a normal package can run, like for a mini one, I always include Claim Your Voice. That's a great way to leverage the stuff too, because people need the skills in there typically. So packages tend to run from $2,650 to $8,000, depending upon, number of sessions when what's needed or VIP. So there's a different stuff. If you just wanted an assessment, then like that's like I don't really offer it typically, but like I would do it here for $295 for that, which is like I said,
Thank you.
yeah, which is a 75-minute.
And at least they can start with a half-hour consultation.
Yeah, and a consult's free.
Yeah.
So just call me.
Call me,
Yeah, just call me.
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah,
Complete?
I think we're good.
Yay, Jonathan, stand up, Thank you.
Yeah.
So stay here with me. I appreciate it. We've got the mic as well. So I really encourage you to reach out. Every one of you, you get that free half hour, whatever. Just talk with him. He might be able to give you some important insights specifically, and then see if it works to potentially work with him. I do see more and more the need to bring all of this into that online space, right? Like most people don't even think of it. It's just in front of a screen, and boy, wasn't this valuable in terms of how you bring more presence to that online box. And our work is always going to be blended. You get that. From here on out, it's in person and online and in person again and online. That's not going away. So having the tools for both of those to be more impactful, I think is really important. So so I'm going to keep working with Jonathan. I'm going to keep bringing him into what I do and encourage you to reach out to him.
Thanks,
so thank
Chris.
you again.
And by the way, just one quick note is that we spend so much time working on the words. So, but nonverbal communication, well, some people think it's 93% of communication. That's not actually true. It's a misinterpreted study. It is 50 to 80%. So people are paying more attention to how you say it, to your presence, than to the words you're saying. and so one way or another, it's important to make sure that you're addressing that. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. And thanks for staying longer, guys. I mean, we're well into our lunch hour, but it is a little after 1. So I'm wondering, we're in the flow. Yesterday seemed like a long time. Do you want to just take a little over an hour for lunch? Does that work for you guys instead of that 90 minutes? So what time is it now? 1:11. So up to 2:15, be back here, 2:15, ready to go. Does that sound good? Cool. And then, there's quicker restaurants. We could talk about it as we break here than doing that whole thing. There's a couple places to get food more quickly. So awesome. Thank you again, Jonathan. Let's go to lunch back here at 2:15.
Okay.
That was great, Jonathan. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's great. So glad you're here. And
Thanks.
what's the quote? Just the